Hello, welcome to the second part of One Man's Faith. Now let's take our attention and turn it to Hebrews. All right, I've been enjoying this. Hebrews is a neat book. Hebrews chapter 9. Hebrews chapter 9. And we're going to read let's say the first 5 verses there to start with. Now, even the first covenant had regulations of divine worship and the earthly sanctuary. For there is a tabernacle prepared, the outer one in which were the lampstand, the table, and the sacred bread. This is called the holy place. Behind the second veil, there is a tabernacle, which is called the Holy of Holies, having a golden altar of incense and an ark of the covenant, covered on all sides with gold, in which was a jar holding the manna, Aaron's rod that budded, and the table of the covenant. And above it were the cherubim of glory overshadowing the mercy seat. But of these things we cannot now speak in detail. I always love it when they put that in there. Why not? We want to hear more, don't we? Okay, all right, let's look. He is talking about the covenant. Now, if you remember from chapter 8, the last verse, in verse 13 says, and when he said a new covenant, he had made the first obsolete. But whatever is becoming obsolete and growing old is ready to disappear. But then he goes on, he says, now even the first covenant had regulations of divine worship. Regulations of divine worship and the earthly sanctuary. Revelations of divine worship. What is he talking about? What kind of worship? The oracles that he put down, the ordinances that he put down on what the Hebrew people had to do in the tabernacle was worship. It was worship. It was worth for him. It was worthy to him. And he laid down certain aspects of how they were to handle the tabernacle. Now, the tabernacle means a dwelling place. All right? God said, I want to dwell with you. I want to go with you. I want to be your God. I'm going to lead you. I'm going to guide you. Listen, I'm going to give you a cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night. The cloud to keep the sun off of you, and a pillar of fire by night to show the way and to give light to the community. He says, I'm going to do this. But here's what's got to happen. But here's what's got to happen. And so he says in verse 2, for there was a tabernacle prepared, the outer one in which were the lampstand, the table, and the showbread. Now, I want to turn to my whiteboard here and just look at something. He gave an ordinance to build a tented area that I believe was 100 by 100 this way and 75 that way. And it's called the tabernacle area. On the outside of the tabernacle, or in the outer court here, there was an altar, and there was in some places it's called the sea. It was a big bathtub. Now, the altar was to place sacrifices on it for sin, and the laver up here was, in a sense, the baptism. They had to wash before they could go into the holy place. All right? Now, this is the inner tabernacle. This is the tabernacle in which it was divided, and this area is the holy place. This area right here is the holy place, and this area up here is the Holy of Holies. Now, if you'll notice, in Hebrews, he's not talking about any of this stuff out here, because that dealt with getting into the presence of God. The sacrifice was given. That was Jesus Christ. There are no more sacrifices. And the laver represented Baptism. Baptism, I believe, is required. It's not something that we can just by happenstance decide to do or not. In order to go into the holy place, you had to be baptized. You had to wash. And I believe that still holds for us today. Okay? But he's talking to Christians now, so this is not needed. All right? Now, let's zoom in on the tabernacle. So I'm just going to erase it. I'm going to erase that. Okay? And now we've got the tabernacle, okay? That what was right there, I just zoomed into it, okay? Now, there was a veil. Sorry about this. I am not Picasso. Okay? There, and I'm writing with my wrong hand. Okay, there was a veil. This area was 15 by 15 and had the Ark of the Covenant. That was all that was back here. Now, I'm talking about the earthly one, okay? The earthly one. In this area, there was the menorah. See if I can do this. 2, 4, 6, 8. There. That's a sideways menorah. Over on this side was the table that had showbread. It had 12 pieces of bread on it. And right here before the veil was called the altar of incense. All right? The menorah provided light, illumining, kind of indicating the Holy Spirit. The showbread indicated the 12 tribes. There was 12 pieces of bread on it. The altar of incense, they were constantly burning incense on it as the prayers and the worship. Okay? Now, so this is what he's talking about. He's saying that in the outer tabernacle, the longer one it has the menorah, the lampstand, the table of the sacred bread, and this is called the holy place. Behind the second veil, there was a tabernacle which is called the Holy of Holies. All right? Having the golden altar of incense and the Ark of the Covenant. Now let's go back to it, because look at this. On the one that was on earth, there was the veil, and in the holy place were 3 articles of furniture. Only 1 article of furniture was beyond the veil. Now, in what he's telling us, behind the second veil, this veil here, he says that the altar of incense is now on this side. How? Why? Why does Exodus show us the altar of incense be on this side of the veil when Hebrews is saying it's on this side of the veil? Well, here's what happens. Jesus becomes the veil. All right? Through his blood, and I think we'll see that if we haven't already. So, in essence, and we know from the Gospels that the veil was torn in two, thereby opening up the Holy of Holies. And so the altar of incense is closer, is in there because of what Jesus did. It's standing before the altar. Before the Ark of the Covenant. Now, the Ark of the Covenant, he says, has a golden jar full of manna, Aaron's rod that budded, and the tables of the covenant, or the 10 Commandments, the stone tablets. That's what was in the Ark of the Covenant. The things that God provided. Okay? He provided the manna, he budded Aaron's rod, and he provided the 10 Commandments on that stone. God, we looked at this last week. God wrote it by his own hand, his own finger. He wrote out the 10 Commandments on those 2 stone tablets. Twice he did this. The first time When Moses went back down with the Ten Commandments, he threw them down because of what the people did. In other words, he was indicating that they had broken the covenant. Well, Moses went back up on the mountain, and God again gave him the Ten Commandments, but this time Moses had to provide the stone tablets. And God took those stone tablets and he wrote the Ten Commandments on them. Okay? So God both times wrote out with his finger the Ten Commandments. And so that was part of what was in the earthly covenant, or the earthly tabernacle, okay? The outer tabernacle, the outer place, is not included because it's all incorporated. Well, it's required to get into it. So we're into the tabernacle itself, okay? And that's done through sacrificing our lives by letting Jesus be Lord, and baptism. Okay, accepting Jesus as Lord and baptism bring us into the holy place and the Holy of Holies. It's now open, and that's what he's talking about here. Verse 6, he says, now, when these things are so prepared, and that's the furniture and everything that's in the tabernacle, the priests are continually entering the outer tabernacle, the holy place, performing the divine worship. In other words, they have to trim the lamp. They have to keep it going. They have to bring coals from the outer altar into the incense altar and put a special blend of herbs and incense on there to burn, to constantly burn. And they had to change the bread out. I believe it was weekly. That was the divine worship. Okay? That's the divine worship. There is worship. Service is worship. All right? We got to take another break. Wow, it came up so quick. So let's take a break, and I'll be right back.